Hello, welcome to Emeka Wonye and Law and Development and our usual discussions on the happenings in Nigeria, particularly in the eastern part of Nigeria. Last week, we talked about the events in Imo State involving the Ipob, the ESN, the security crisis, the bombing of police stations or the attack on police stations, and the various measures Nigerian government had taken to address that brewing crisis. While things have settled down a bit, it is too early to say that the crisis is over. On the contrary, there is potential for escalation until some concrete measures have taken place. Significant event was the meeting of federal government representatives with the leading politicians or political office holders from the eastern part of Nigeria in Enugu. That was a summit which was well received by many and which indicated there might be a solution, there might be a better understanding between the federal government, the state governments, the governments of the various states of the southeast region, and which of course we expected might indicate restraint on the part of the federal government, because we were all worried about what has been described as security crackdown. Crackdown in this context actually meant sending special team of police force, special team of soldiers into Imo State towns and villages in the bid of trying to capture or arrest or subdue the ESN fighters. We always knew that that sort of development will result in casualties and fatalities, and will expose the civilian population to gunfights, as was seen in Olu, one of the cities or towns in Imo State. So there is a respite. There is a belief that things are going to get better after the security summit. There are a few important things that one could take away from the security summit. The federal government was able to have a dialogue with state governors and other politicians, including opposition politicians, and they asked very frank questions. How do we go from here? What do we want? The federal government wanted to seek clarity on the position of the Igbos regarding the question of secession and regarding the issue of ESN and the activities of Ipob, the militancy of the Ipob. The first important thing to observe was that the governors or the politicians from the East were unanimous in indicating that they want one Nigeria. So the question of secession was clearly renounced or denounced by all the leading Igbo politicians. This is a very crucial thing, because sometimes there is an appearance that the Igbos, Igbo elites and the Igbo leaders are somehow sympathetic with Ipob'S quest for secession. But that came out clearly, that they don't want it. And we believe that the position of the Igbo politicians reflects ultimately the feelings of the majority of the Igbo people. The issue of secession, the belief that secession is in the interest of the Igbos, is something of dubious credibility. There is no scientific basis, no economic basis, no indication clearly, beyond the noises in the street among the youths, that the Igbos would want to secede from Nigeria. So anything anybody does, I mean the rest of Nigeria, anything they do based on the assumption that the Igbos want to secede is wrong. Majority of the Igbos don't. However, the representatives of the federal government also wanted the Igbo governors to condemn IPOB or take a very drastic, assume drastic tone in assessing the role of IPOB. The governors from the East carefully avoided that. They understood the complexity of the situation. The federal government had appeared partial in the way it analyzed violence. You have to look at violence from a comprehensive point of view. What led to violence? What are the various types of violence? Which one is originating violence and which one is retaliatory or responsory violence? Undue focus on IPOB will be improper. Nigeria is a country ridden by violence. IPOB violence, as bad as it is not the only violence in Nigeria. And people must also look at the causes of those. Because one thing the governors had to do was to ask the federal government to clarify its own intent regarding the activities of the herdsmen, the Fulani herdsmen. It was precisely the failure of the federal government to take a clear position on the herdsmen violence that tended to justify. It played into the hands of IPOB. IPOB then used it as an excuse to militarize, used it as an excuse to develop an armed wing. So all these were discussed, and I believe there was sincerity from both sides. The Igbo governors were very frank in speaking to the federal government concerning the feelings of the people from the East. And I'm sure the federal government officials had to take this message home. But a bigger question which has to be discussed is the long-term effect of the activities of IPOB as regards the role of the Igbos in Nigerian politics. It's not, one should not shy away from admitting that IPOB conducted business in a way that ultimately hurt the Igbos. We can test this by looking at the question of who is going to be or what region is going to produce the next president in Nigeria. The so-called zoning theories of various political parties. And we start by looking at the ruling party, APC. The question all along had been, is it not time for the Igbos to produce the next president? Since the end of the war in 1970, the Igbos had been systemically excluded from the top position in Nigerian politics. Whether by default or by design, the fact is that the Igbos had never produced the president of Nigeria since the war, despite their competence, despite their contribution to Nigeria. And this time, people felt, okay, as an indication that the war is really over, as an indication that there was no victor, no vanquished in the war, the Igbos ought to produce a president. It will be a sign that they are part of Nigeria and that they are included in Nigeria. And if it was done, it would defeat the argument that the Igbos are marginalized and treated as second-class citizens in their own country. But one looks at what has happened over the past 2 years, the activities of IPOB. The IPOB led or ignited the new Biafran movement. That is the quest for secession. That is problematic because the quest for secession was going on at the same time as there is a movement for zoning of the presidency to the Igbos as a sign of inclusion and a message to the Igbos that they are an integral part of Nigeria. The two were going on. The problem with secession is that it is not attainable. Secession is not attainable. It's not viable. It's not necessary. It will be defeated in an informed referendum. By informed referendum was if we sit down and discuss fully, in details, the benefits and the burden, the cost and benefits of secession to the Igbos. A rational Igbo person will not accept secession. There are many problems why secession is indeed a pipe dream. First and foremost, it's clear that the people of the Niger Delta, that is the non-Igbo speaking members of the territory claimed as Biafra, there's clear indication that they don't want to join with the Igbos in any one country called Biafra, or by whatever name is called. They don't want to see themselves left alone as minority in a country where the Igbos will be overwhelming majority. So that in itself already defeated a very critical aspect of the Biafran dream. It means that Biafra becomes then nothing but the Igbo states. And if the Igbo states form a country, they will be landlocked. They'll be landlocked and they'll be completely surrounded by Nigeria. I don't know whether that was what President Buhari meant when he spoke about a dot in a circle. But certainly, without the Niger Delta people in the Biafran aspiration, the Igbos will have their country that is completely surrounded by Nigeria. That has ramifications, serious ramifications. Another thing you must also understand is that the Igbos have nearly 20 million people, 20 million Igbos living outside Igbo land in Nigeria. Those people could be impacted seriously by secession if that is actualized. And in a referendum, those people will vote. So I'm seeing a referendum where 90% of Igbos outside Igbo land will vote against secession, and 90% of Niger Delta non-speaking Igbos in Niger Delta will vote against secession. That is enough to defeat secession. That would be enough in a referendum to defeat the idea of actualization of Biafra. There are additional reasons why Biafra doesn't make sense. In fact, one has to really look at the origin of Biafra. How was the territory of Biafra defined in 1967? It was defined by a very simple, convenient logic of Ojukwu. Ojukwu just turned the territory he was the governor of into a country, Biafra. There was no other logic to justify the definition of Biafra. If Benue State, if the people of Idoma had happened to be in the eastern region in 1967, Ojukwu would have made them Biafra as well. So the so-called the territory of Biafra is very sadly unfortunate because many people haven't thought deeply about it. They just said, Biafra, you ask them, how do you get this map? They go to 1967. But they forget the events and special circumstances of 1967. So looking at the effect of IPOB on Igbo's role in politics, we are seeing the effect the quest for secession had on the other movement, the Igbo presidency. The Igbo presidency had been seriously impacted because ultimately, both the West and the East are actually in a position to blackmail the North to concede to a rotational presidency, leaving the North to choose who to support, either to support an Igbo candidate in the interest of rotation to the East, or to support a Yoruba candidate, the Western candidate, to make sure that they remain in the country. So recently, we saw the rise of a man called Sunday Igboho. Sunday Igboho began to ask for Dua Republic. In other words, he began to mimic secession, the call for secession. He began to mimic IPOB's call for secession, but in a very benign, non-violent, non-hostile manner. So how did that come? What is the ultimate effect of all this? One can guess. Now, the northern Nigeria, or the rest of Nigeria, are being told the Igbos may secede, the Yorubas may secede. So there's going to be need for appeasement. The North will certainly grant one of them something to keep it within Nigeria. The North may think it is better to give it to the West, because the North and the West together, the East will not secede, cannot secede. So that makes the West a very important bride that the northern government or the northern elite will try to keep together. And again, it may lead to sacrificing the Igbos again. So it is very, very sad. What IPOB has achieved in the end is going to be, well, they won't get their Biafra. It's not going to happen. Not that somebody like me doesn't like them. I want them to be happy, but I know they won't get Biafra. It's not possible. It's not tenable. It's not necessary. It's not viable. So they chose something that is impossible in exchange for something that is reasonable and likely. What is reasonable and likely here is an Igbo presidency. We have every opportunity, the Igbos have every opportunity to produce a president. They have every reason to produce a president. But the question is that the Yoruba, the West, also wants the presidency. And they have their candidate in Tinubu. So Sunday Igboho, in his quest for dual republic, did not go to the extreme. Indeed, he tied it. He said, if one had listened carefully, Sunday Igboho said, if we don't have a dual republic before the next election, the candidate, presidential candidate, or the new president should be a Yoruba person. He even mentioned Ahmed Tinubu by name. So essentially, the quest for dual republic is not antithetical to the Yoruba presidential candidate. However, the quest for secession by IPOB is antithetical to Igbo presidency. In other words, they leave no room for an Igbo presidency. They don't see that an Igbo presidency is probably capable of solving a lot of the problems of exclusion that I have complained about. So, looking at it, beyond the immediate noises, one can see how extremely damaging to the Igbos the IPOB cause had been. It is very subtle and not intuitive. By not being intuitive, I mean, it may not occur to them. I'm sure that so many young Igbos who are clamoring for secession have not sat down to really ask what it meant. I have participated in a number of debates and discussions, and to my greatest astonishment, many of them believe that even without the Niger Delta, even without Delta State, Rivers, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom and Cross River, they still believed that Biafra would not be landlocked. When you ask them, why do you think Biafra would not be landlocked, they will mention some inland waterways, a lake, a Guta Lake, or River Niger that could enter the sea. They don't realize that's not the definition of being landlocked. Insofar as that lake passes the territory of any state that is not part of Biafra, then you are landlocked. Being landlocked doesn't mean that you don't have navigable inland waters. You may have navigable water. In fact, if things are done well, ships could move through River Niger to Onitsha. And you can have Onitsha port. But River Niger has to pass through rivers or Bayelsa to enter the Atlantic. So River Niger doesn't stop you from being landlocked if you don't have a river state as part of Biafra or Bayelsa state as part of Biafra. So the level of ignorance and confusion among the youths is very troubling. That is what is driving and pushing them into this quest for Biafra, the idea of secession. It is hurting the Igbos, it is setting the Igbos back for the reason that first, you can't have it. It's not going to happen. I don't see it. It's not going to happen. And since it's not going to happen, the alternative would have been an Igbo presidency. That would have been a significant way to placate the Igbos and to cure Nigeria. I maintain the argument that the exclusion of the Igbos from national leadership may very well be the missing answer to the Nigerian problem. An Igbo president is necessary to make Nigeria truly one. Otherwise, Nigeria is one in theory, where only people of particular ethnic groups are producing the presidency, and at the same time actively excluding the Ipob'S from it. So we need to continue this dialogue. We need to have people sit down and talk. But I am sad that the Igbos are about to lose a very important opportunity. The quest for Biafra, the way it's carried out by IPOB, has damaged Igbos' chances and diminished their ability to truly say that they are or ought to lead Nigeria. It's not too late. I believe if we keep talking about these things, probably people will get to know more about the consequences of their action and the consequences of the choices they've made. Thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.